All right. So you were having a dream, and
Yeah, just this morning, just 10 minutes ago, and my alarm went off, but I was trying to keep hold of the thread of the dream. And so the world was trying to pull me in, the material world was trying to pull me in. Um, but I had woken up, this boy, Prince, woke me up at like 3 a.m. He just got he got a stick poked in his eye, so he's on like these eye drops, so then they don't sit well with him, so he has to go out potty, and he'll let us know. But he jumped off the bed at like 3 a.m. and it shook me up, and I just tried to stay. I knew I was having a dream, and I was in a dream, and I like tried to very just slowly and calmly go to the door, let him out, and just stay in that state. And I couldn't find the thread of the dream. I couldn't grab back onto it. And I've had that the last couple of nights where I just couldn't pull my dream back.
mm-hmm.
And so this morning I'd fallen back to sleep in the middle of the night, and this morning I was in a dream that was, I don't know, I was deep in it, but my alarm was going off trying to pull me out of it a little bit, and so I feel a little bit out of sorts because I was trying to stay in there, but yet trying to be on time for this,
Yeah,
um, and a little out of sorts because I don't know what it means. I was with a buddy. I remember a couple of shopping carts. My buddy was renting this room, and but I was already at this place, and then there were two shopping carts, and it was like I was trying to make room in a vehicle to stuff the two shopping carts. And I don't know what the shopping carts had in them, but yeah, it's so I don't even know what it means, but
mm,
it was yeah. So I haven't had a chance to unpack it or even like try to write it down or unravel it
yeah.
so I can get into it more. Um, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking as you're talking about making room for the shopping carts, um it's like holding on to the means, not the end. Not like the means to a destination or to the purpose, holding on to the specific means that you imagine you need to get there, but there's not enough room for it.
Hmm. Interesting. Yes, that's good. Yeah. The shopping cart symbol. That's a
Yeah.
good description. Yeah.
And there's a sort of absurdity about it too. Like, I mean, there's kind of a comical absurdity of like trying trying to package shopping carts in a vehicle whenever there's new means and new locations all the time. Um, it's like, I mean, we know that the store provides it, but it's almost like Spirit provides new means at new locations all the time. We don't need to hold on to a specific cart. It's over cumbersome. It's a big burden. It's unnecessary versus just taking our groceries out and being like, I'm going to leave this shopping. I'm done with this now. I'm going to let go of this modality now because it's gotten me what I need. I don't have to hold on to it. The modality is not It's not the thing, right?
It, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. Because I was putting the shopping carts into the vehicle. So I was, yeah, yeah. I was attempting to take a modality with me,
Yeah,
but it may not serve me any longer.
right. Well, it clearly didn't.
Yeah. I mean, I got them in. I remember getting them in. But I do remember, I don't really remember what was in them, but I do remember it was like it was almost like a package that was wrapped in like brown bag
Uh-huh.
kind of. So I didn't know what was in there, but I just
Yeah.
knew, and I had to put one in the side door and one in the back, and they weren't. It's funny how the dream kind of allows almost like shape shifting a little bit because it wasn't like, you can imagine trying to put a shopping cart in an actual vehicle,
Yeah.
right? But here it was like it wasn't really it wasn't really a big deal. It was just kind of something I thought I had to do in the dream, and popped the trunk open and moved a few things around and got enough space for it and put it in. It wasn't like a big feat, but like in an actual vehicle in real life, it would be, you know, it's not easy to do, put a
Right.
shopping cart.
Yeah. What do you think the well, first of all, I think it's fascinating that you have the thing that you remember is the shopping cart and not really what the package was, what was in it, which sort of leads me to believe like the focus on the modality and not the present. Like literally, like that package is a present. It's like a present. It's the present moment. It is the thing. It's the
Mm.
gift. It's the deliverable, right? And instead the modality for it to be delivered. And even if you got the shopping cart in that, it makes your vehicle less functional, like your vehicle in the bigger sense of the word.
Mm, interesting. Yeah, I see where you're going with that. Yeah, my vehicle is kind of messy right now in real life, and
Are we talking literal vehicle or metaphorical vehicle?
literal vehicle,
Okay.
and it still provides this a similar function, but it's just a big SUV, so it feels like it's just an endless SUV. I could put so much stuff into this thing where, and I've had it before where we found something for free and we have the two dogs with us in Harland, and we've got and it's just and we've got a bunch of stuff, groceries and stuff, and it's like, wow, we can still fit that thing in here. So I had that recently actually. So talking about that vehicle being less my personal vehicle being less functional, I think makes more sense than like that than but it's interesting because sometimes that my actual vehicle functionality impacts my subconscious, where it does I have a I have a perception that my actual vehicle can haul all these things. Sometimes it's cluttered though, and it's a frustrating experience,
Mm-hmm.
and it actually clutters my actual vehicle.
What kind of SUV do you have?
A Sequoia
Sequoia.
Toyota. Yeah.
This this podcast is sponsored by Sequoia, where you have Toyota Sequoia, where you can have endless space, dogs, furniture from the side of the road. Shopping carts, all of it will fit in the square with room to spare. Um, so I was this morning, daylight savings time. It's for people out in podcast land. Daylight savings time has just happened in the Midwest. And so my normal 6 o'clock feels a lot like 5 o'clock. And I've had a challenge going to bed at my normal time. I'm laying there, and then I was deep asleep with I have a wrist alarm that goes off so it doesn't wake my wife up. And I'm like, what the hell are you? I didn't even know what was going on. I was such in a different place. Anyway, this morning, um, I'm pretty out of it. I do some reading, a little bit of meditation, and I'm on flipping through TikTok. That's how out of it I am. And it was talking about little children and toys, and how having a whole big basket of toys is super overwhelming, and it causes them to be easily distracted from one thing to the next, and how you should have all that hidden, and you should put out like 3 or 4 toys, let them choose from those, and have all that big stuff. And it was like, this is just like what it's like for an adult when you see this. And it showed huge piles of laundry, or a computer with like a million post-it notes on it, and all this clutter on the desk, that it distracts us, it overwhelms us. And so it's just funny that I saw that, and then you talk about this truck, like it's got a huge capacity. I could just endless stuff I could just put in there. Um, yeah, and yet sometimes those things, it's not even like, it's not about capacity, it's about whether it serves our mental and emotional state of mind. Whether
Mhm.
That's why I was thinking, that's why the word functionality came to mind when we was talking about the vehicle. Like, you can do it, but it makes your vehicle less functional in terms of being able to pick somebody up or carry other things, by holding on to a modality that's unnecessary. It was just for a moment. Now, you may
Mhm.
use that modality somewhere else at some other time, but you don't need the cart with you.
Yeah. Yeah, it really doesn't make sense to put a cart in there other than the dream telling me something about, because the cart, like you said, the cart, it's interesting. It's one modality to the next almost. The cart is a modality and the vehicle is a modality, and I'm attempting to take one modality with me to the next.
Yeah. Yeah. You're doubling up modalities together.
Yeah. And not I was taking two of the old mode. I was trying to duplicate the old modality, take
Yeah.
it with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know what was in the brown wrapped bag. It was almost like I don't know. I don't think I was meant to know. I think it was just supposed to be obscure like that, where it was just represented as there was something in there that is wrapped. And there may also be a component of it too, that the cart represents uh groceries
Mm-hmm.
in a way. So there may also be something in that realm that is, because for me now, like, it's what was the modality that I was trying to bring with me into my other modality, that I was forcing, it's now it's for me to, like, that's for me to find what that was, so that I can I can, try to suss out if that was and if it's an appropriate thing to take with me,
Yeah.
like if I'm going to need it, or if it really was kind of unnecessary because I had no longer use for that. I could have just taken the brown packaged thing out and kept my vehicle functional.
Mhm. Yeah. So what do you yeah. The package still represents the present to me. I can't unsee that. Like it's just it's the present. It's it is a package. It is the moment. It is, and even when you're telling the story, there was almost it was like a really secondary thing to this cart, these carts in the telling of it.
Mhm.
And you don't even know what it is. And there's some part of you that's not even particularly interested, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just even now as you're talking about it, right?
Mhm.
It's there's something about it being wrapped in that like either that brown paper or like an old grocery bag, and that's what I'm seeing, that sort of brown paper,
Yep.
that it's like not flashy. It's, it's got a kind of mundanity about it, right?
Yeah.
uh it's not like it's in flashy tinfoil, like present moments, like a holiday, a present in a holiday is like in all that finery and whatever, and that would get your attention. But this is just the gift of a regular experience, a regular moment, uh,
Mhm.
sort of the mundanity of a particular day.
Yeah. A good representation of the present moment,
Yeah.
and a good representation of my demeanor towards the present moment.
Mhm. Right. That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's interesting, because deep down that kind of strikes a chord because I know I lack at times in the present moment where I'm thinking about other things, um and even like this is an example where I was thinking of what that could represent, as I'm processing this. And maybe there is an aspect that the grocery carts represent the grocery store, because and so, but I think that it does strike a deeper chord, the present moment, and I can see you accurately recognizing that as I explain my dream. I was going to, like last night, I was watching Timcast, and the stuff going on right now.
Mhm.
Like it was a pretty dark episode of Timcast, which is a podcast that Tim
Wait,
Pool.
what's going on, Duncan? I have no idea.
Well, they were talking about all sorts of things could that could potentially happen. They had like a survivalist on survival, somebody who's just kind of looked at all potential risks. And right now, the guy prescribes the greatest risks to be the H1N1 flu, which is now no longer a bird flu, but can be transmitted from mammals and
Mhm.
has a high deadly rate. So a lot of fear in the episode that I had to detach myself from
Mhm.
that before I went to bed. But I've also been thinking a lot about, groceries and finding a new modality for acquiring food,
Yeah.
which is which could be a representation there too. But it's interesting how dreams can work because they can also loop in the the present moment. You also got the present moment thing you got to work on too.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So the carts represent like older modalities of getting food could be represent that as well.
Mhm.
And seeing that, oh, the grocery store is where I've gotten food in the past. I need to hold on to that and like, haven't found a replacement for it. Right.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, one of the things that really struck me as you were talking, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so multi-layered. So you were saying that your alarm went off and you wanted to stay in the dream.
Mhm.
You didn't want to like you were being pulled into the present moment.
Yeah.
Like, and you remember we had that conversation about the cross, and so the horizontal represents the physical plane and the vertical is the spiritual plane, and you're in that dream place. You want to be in that vertical plane, and yet the physical moment, the horizontal plane, is calling you to it. And so we have that we have that pull of the present and almost wanting to ignore the present while you're dreaming, but also in the dream, you're ignoring the present for a modality.
Right.
Like it like happened both in the dream and in reality simultaneously.
Hmm.
Are you saying that this conversation with me is not as exciting as your dream life, Duncan? Am I the brown paper bag, the brown package?
Well, I was taking the brown package was almost like a part of the cart.
Yeah.
So I wanted the modality also, and so I just took the whole thing.
I love it. Well, here in the hood, we see this all the time. We see, and not so much so. Our neighborhood's changed, but people would just walk the whole cart with the groceries to their their apartment or their house down the street. They don't have a car. We used to have this grocery store. I loved it. It was about a block and a half from my house. It was called the Double Eight, and there was three of them, and they were like unlike any grocery store I'd ever been to, uh, in their variety of foods that they had. And I just loved it. It was close by, and the people you saw there, it was different. And so, uh, but they used to have they made these big kind of concrete pillars right outside the grocery store to prevent people from taking the carts home, right? And so it was like you could go through sort of single file through these pillars to get in there because they wouldn't allow you. You take your cart and you're like, dunk. You couldn't take it any further
Interesting.
because to prevent you from taking the modality home. Yeah, yeah, I love to go in there. Um, hmm. Yeah, it reminds me. Can I tell a little non-related story that's funny?
Yeah.
So I chose to live in this neighborhood, which is we were the only white family in our neighborhood, for I don't know, almost the first 10 years. And I bought a house that had been abandoned for 10 years. And yeah, so um and I used to love going to this grocery store up the street, and I was with Amber, and we had three little small kids. We were all walking up to this grocery store to the Double Eight, and this car pulls off the side of the road. And I mean, I'm a college professor, and it's not like I'm a broke person, but here I am with my wife and kids in the tow. We're walking down the street just because it's a couple of blocks away. I'm not walking because I don't have a car. I had two cars, like, and I could have gone to the other grocery store. But I love my children being exposed to like like being immersed in a totally different culture. And this car pulls off the side of the road, and they're like, "Hey, excuse me," and I'm like, "Okay, in this neighborhood, I'm prepared for anything." And the guy comes out, and it's right around Thanksgiving. He goes, um, "I'd like to give you a turkey dinner," and I'm like, um, "What? No, I'm okay. Like I have money." And he's like, "Oh, I want to give you and your family a turkey dinner. Will you take a turkey dinner?" And I was like, he was like, "It's the turkey, it's the dressing, it's all the groceries." And I'm like, I have a turkey at home already. And he's like, "Oh, well, we want to give you this." And I'm like, "Okay, man." And so he's got this one of those big plastic totes, and he's got like 5 or 6 of them in there. And he takes it out, and he sets it out on the curb in front of us. And he's like, "Can I have a picture with you guys?" And I'm like, okay." So it's me and the stranger in this tote of groceries. And then he jumps in his car and he takes off. And then I'm stuck with like, I got to haul this huge tote all the way back to my house, and
Yeah.
it's like 3 blocks or something, but it's still, I wasn't prepared for that. Um, and it was mostly some of the canned stuff was not stuff that I would eat. It's not, you know, I mean, I eat the turkey, but it was like powdered potatoes, and I had real mashed potatoes. But we had that happen a lot in our neighborhood. These sweet little white college kids would come knock on the door and like, "Hey, we would love to give you some groceries." Like, you don't need to give me groceries. I have a job. Like, I can take care of my bills. Like, "Oh, we really want you to have this. God bless you, da da da. And here's a track from our church." And I'm like, "Do you realize how insulting this is?" It's like, you don't you don't know me, and I know the people in that neighborhood, how it felt to them. The whole thing was total craziness.
Mhm.
There was something about that, your your dream, that reminds me of that feeling.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I could see I've had that before where um I was misperceived, where it's almost like I just being misperceived. But it's interesting because the the present moment ought to trump the when we're trying to zoom out and when we get frustrated of being misperceived in this expanse. But
Mhm.
yet really the present moment is that interaction,
Yeah.
with the misperceiver.
Yeah. Yeah. I invited some of those college kids in after the second or third time, and I was like, "Hey, can we just have a conversation? Like, you're sweet people. I know you got a big heart, and I know what you're trying to do. Like, I totally get it." And just helping them kind of like see things differently.
Mhm.
Imagine if somebody came to your door and said, "Hey, we're just in this neighborhood and thought you may need some groceries." How would you feel?
Mhm.
How would that strike you? And at the same time, there's this other end. As we are talking, I'm realizing how much my ego is in this and thinking like, "Oh, I don't need your groceries." And yet it's this like gift I didn't earn. I didn't do anything for. How I was just, you know, I had groceries delivered to my door that I didn't have to buy, right?
Mhm.
Uh, a whole meal given to me and I was able to actually find, I think that turkey, maybe I didn't even eat it. I think I knew somebody else that needed a turkey, and I was like, "Hey, yeah, I just had a friend." I was like, "Hey, do you guys have a turkey for Thanksgiving. They're like, no. And I knew they sort of struggled with money. And I was like, I'm not trying to insult you, but I've got an extra one. And, if it'd be a blessing to you guys, you're welcome to have it. And they're like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah, it'll be good. So I think I found a new home for that turkey. So anyway, you know, there's multiple things like this idea of holding on to modality. In my story, I was holding on the modality of me buying my own groceries, right? And not acknowledging sort of the gift of the present moment of having something good delivered to me, even though it was in this brown paper. It wasn't in the flashy pack. The present wasn't in flashy packaging that would get my attention. It was in this, guy in a Toyota Corolla with plastic bins in the back of his, back
Yeah,
of his car that was clearly had been assigned to get rid of these. It was just looking to anybody who he could possibly give it to and take a picture of. Uh,
yeah, yeah. That's a great story. Yeah, and quite relevant because it would have suited you to bring it to put that in the cart and just cart it home, you know.
right.
But but a great opportunity, you know, to be able to pass that along to somebody else who did need it
Yeah,
and who could have used it and create another present moment with that person.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a lot better than, you know, because I've recently, I don't know if this is on topic or not, but over this past weekend, a couple of teenagers were at my door and I had seen there was a car across the street at the park that was, you know, just kind of pulled in there, not in a parking spot, but just kind of pulled in. And sometimes the car dealership guys go drive over there and park and they don't pull into a spot, but they just park it and take pictures of the car. So I thought maybe, but it was just kind of pulled in and it was sitting there for a while, you know, as I'm walking around doing my thing, I see out the window that it's still there. And so a couple of teenagers show up at my door and at, ask for help. They ask if I have a gas can because they ran out of gas. And so I helped them out, but it really got me thinking because of everything that's going on, you know, with the bank stuff and with um the supply chain stuff and grocery prices and um just all that stuff is a little concerning. And so it's, you know, somebody knocking on my door for help and I could help him out here. He offered to pay, but I could tell he was short on cash. He's delivering for Grubhub and he just made a delivery down the street and he ran out of gas and they pushed into the park. And you know, it's interesting because in like the accountability handout, one of the questions was, have I been giving to someone who that I perceived hasn't deserved it? And so that kind of came up that, I think like I was going to give in that moment, but, you know, he insisted he was going to pay. But then when it came time for us to part ways and I had brought him to the gas station, filled up my gas can, put my gas can in his car, he didn't offer anymore, which was a little bit, you know, it's not a big deal to me. It's really not. I'm here to serve. But then I started thinking about if this were to happen, you know, what if somebody's coming around looking for food and, you know, when are my resources, you know, in my resources could also be seen as my modalities. When are when is it that I'm to relinquish my resources
Mhm.
and when is it that I'm to hold them and say sorry, I can't help right now.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to. It's an interesting thing because I was imagining myself explaining that I couldn't help. Like what would I have how would I go about that? Like maybe I could help him, I could let him borrow the gas can, right? But at some point, if my gas can's full of gas and I know I'm going to need that gas because the power's out or I need it for the generator or and I don't know if I'm overthinking down this and if I'm overthinking this just because I tend to watch these prepper things a little bit but I also notice the grocery prices and I notice that there are banks now that it's almost like the Lehman Brothers where in 2008 that
Mm-hmm.
we it's like the signal, that was the one that went down a few months before the rest of the big crash. And we saw that with the Silicon Valley Bank thing. So it's like, what's really going to happen are a bunch of people going to lose a bunch of money? And if that's the case, are people going to come to my door looking for food instead of gas or both?
Yeah.
And so I've just been thinking down that, you know, and I don't know if this is the place to talk about that, but it's interesting because the grocery cart, I think there's something to the grocery cart, being, it's the grocery cart represents a modality for groceries in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that is the answer, to be in the present moment and just kind of it's almost like with all things, there's not really an ultimatum. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's that I'm to seek to discern in the present moment
Yeah.
and just take the present moment with me. And I don't need the modality.
Mm. So when I first bought this house, um, we I was promised a job at the college, a full-time job at the college, and then they rescinded that after I had closed on the house. And so, um, but it was too late. And I grossly underestimated the cost of the repairs of this massive old home. I mean, I had some money saved, but this is the first time I owned a home. I had no idea. Like, oh, I need to upgrade the electrical box. That's going to be like $10,000. like, I just didn't know. And so that money that we saved was just gone. And this house was in ill repair. And it was not long after that 2008 happened, the housing that happened in my house, because I bought kind of the top of the market, and then the house was now underwater by 50%. And my first wife, who was a wedding photographer, we lived in Bloomington, and she had all this work because all the people in Bloomington, all those college students getting married and da da da. And then here in Indianapolis, she didn't have those same connections, and plus we had a small child, and it was much harder. And the house is big, and so it's hard to heat, and like everything was expensive. So when we first lived here, we actually qualified for food stamps, and um, there was a lot of crime nearby, and uh, you know, our neighbors were one of them worked as a janitor in a hospital, and the other one worked as a line cook. I mean, these were blue collar people, good people. But I had a lot of people that would come. I mean, so we qualified for food stamp. We got it. The the OB doctor had suggest like, hey, you can get you know these food stamps that would help pay for milk and cheese and some stuff from groceries. And so we used that. I was ashamed or embarrassed of that until my job became full time, and then I was able to take care of the bills. But those first few years was pretty rough up here, and I had people all the time. They saw a white family moving in the neighborhood, working on the house, and people came to the door 2 or 3 times a day asking for money. Oh, I'm hungry. Oh, I need a bus pass. Ah, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it was nonstop. Um, and trying to navigate that as a spiritual person of compassion, but also just trying to take care of my family was a challenge. It sounds similar to you. And I made lots of mistakes around this road. Sometimes I was cold and just like, hey, we don't have enough as it is. Good luck. And sometimes I gave when uh, probably I was just feeding someone's drug habit, right? And I felt like I'd just been shamed into doing something. Neither one of those felt good. But what I started doing is there was so much trash in the neighborhood, just in the streets everywhere. And I just said, I had two responses. One, if you work for me, I'll pay you $10 an hour, but it's going to be hard physical labor.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want the money, we can do that. Or if you're not willing to do that, we can go for a walk and pick up trash together. I'll stop what I'm doing. I'll get a trash bag. We'll go pick up trash in the neighborhood together, you and I, for an hour, and I'll pay you $10 for that.
Good idea. Yeah. Nice.
And very few people took me up on those.
Hmm.
I did have a couple of people that worked for me, and often when they worked for a couple of hours, they took their $20 and I never ever saw them again. I was really grateful for it. I mean, there was one guy that stuck around and I got to know, and it turns out, he was addicted to crack. He had been homeless for 10 years, but he was a vet and helped keep, I helped him get into a sober living and treatment. And, he's been off the streets for almost 10 years now. And he's got a little lawn care business, a couple of guys that work for him. I helped him with a little loan on his truck. So there is a way to kind of navigate this. It's this sort of middle road. Like I imagine in your scenario, it'd be like, hey, you know what? I've got leaves that need to be raked. You want to do that for half an hour, and I'll hook you up with some gas. Oh, look at that little fella back there.
You want to say hi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, what's your name?
It's David.
You don't have a name, do you? Oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry to ask you your name. That was very impolite of me.
He came down. He's wondering where all his dates were. He thinks I ate all of his dates. And I
Oh,
think they're upstairs in the cupboard if you want to go get them. Did you have a good night's sleep?
Yeah.
Did you have any dreams?
Not today.
No, did not today. Can't remember them.
Yeah.
Maybe if you think about it, you might.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
well, it was nice to meet you. So, yeah, I mean, there's these middle roads, and when I look back at my time, I remember JT was the name of this guy. He'd come by and he'd be like, "I'm hungry," da da da, and I'm like, you know what? I have some leftovers. Come in, and I'll feed you. You know, and I had somebody that was like, "Hey, I need a bus pass to get to blah blah blah," and I'm like, "How far away? What's the address?" And they told me, and then I'm like, "Get in the car. I'll take you there." And they're like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" And I've done that several times, and I just get to know another human being, and that feels good. Like that feels really good. It feels way different than just handing them money.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes people come by and ask for money. I just like, tell me your story, right? Like, what's going on? And I don't know. As someone that tries to like follow Christ, like the teaching and the person of Christ, that's just the way I saw him navigate those situations. And I've always been taken care of, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Julianne tells me all the time not to be in the fear vibration. It's like bad juju. And so I just, you know, I get all puckered up whenever I hear stuff like this happening. And at the same time, there's part of me that's excited because I think this old system needs to fail. It's so corrupt. It's so overdue. It should have failed completely in 2008, right?
Yeah.
But so it's time. Of course, I'm scared. I got all these children and my own stuff. Um, but I chose to come here for this time. Some part of me at a spiritual level knew that it was going to happen. And I'm here to help humanity cross over. I've been shown that so many times that I'm this bridge to help people cross over into this new era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah. I find myself in, scrolling the Twitter feed or whatever it is, the fear state. There's like a thirst for information, but yet it's all divisive and um yeah. Last night after listening to that podcast, I didn't have to, but it served me to shed that and kind of put a pinpoint on the information that I was being presented. And I could tell, the guy presenting it, he went to Iraq, he was military guy, and so not to like place any preconceived judgment on him, but like the way he was presenting it, he has these fears, and it was almost like just an extension of his personal fears, the way that it was being presented. And I just kind of, you know, prescribed him in that way a little bit, and that allowed me to kind of separate from the fears. And because it isn't something that we can't get through moment by moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This thing that God's been really showing me this last week, and like it's funny how I hear it in so many different ways. I'd gotten out of the habit of doing this, and I'm back in it where I really imagine this 7 circles of white light. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4, and it creates like a sphere around me, arm's length, all the way around my body, like Da Vinci's Man, right? It's like that, but there's 7 flows of this white light around me that creates a force field where that fear-based energy that's everywhere I go cannot penetrate in. And sometimes I ask Michael to help me with it. But it's just that as an empath, it's very easy for me to take on the feelings of others, and it weighs me down and prevents me from being of service. And so I think that this is a important thing to do in this era. As I definitely do it when I go into dark places, like Walmart is like that. I have to do that before I go in because there's so much dark energy in that place. It drains me. I get dizzy. I get a headache. I don't know where I am. Just feel sick. Like I may end up looking and buying stuff I don't want to buy. I'm just in this weird sort of hypnotized state. So I have to do that before I go in there. And then I get very pointed, like a military precision thing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go into aisle 3. I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this. And then I'm going to get the hell out of there. Right. Yeah. I'm noticing we're at time. So it's probably a good time to close things off. Do you have any parting words?
Yeah, I mean, what you just shared, sometimes I don't know that I am as tuned into my empath, you know. I think sometimes I tend to over accommodate any situation, and then I take those energies on.
Yeah.
And so I definitely know what you mean with that. And that is a good practice to create those boundaries and those defenses before the dark place, or during, or and shedding it afterwards. Because even after, you know, sometimes I can feel it, like when I help those guys out, you know, I knew they weren't carrying the best energy.
Yeah.
And I, shook hands with them and met them, but afterwards it was like I could, I could feel, I was like, uh-oh, do I got to go for a run and shake this off, or I gotta shake this a little bit somehow, because I don't want any bad juju coming my way now. So it's interesting, because I feel like there's an interesting thing to tune into there, that you know it's a little bit woo woo, or it could be perceived as woo woo, but
I mean, we're energetic beings, and so we take on the energy of the people around us and the energy of the place around us. If we're not careful, it just affects us. It's physics, right? And there's this Reiki trick of, not a trick, but practice of, you take your left hand, you go swipe down your arm, right hand, swipe down, left hand again, and then you do that across your chest, left, right, left, and then you take all of the imagined cords and you grab it up, and then you take scissors and you cut, and release. And so I've gone back to doing that when I have those kind of encounters when I'm at work, because I am around college students and I pick up their energy. Sometimes with coaching clients, I'll pick up their energy, and I just need to release that stuff. I don't know that the hand movements do it. It may be just our intention, but the hand movements give me kind of a physical manifestation that I did it.
yeah. Nice. That's good. Yeah.
Well, sweet, man. I didn't know where this conversation was going to go, but it was a good one.
It
Thanks
was. Yeah.
for going there with me. All right.